being continued, Social Economy Research in Canada. This is brought to you by the Canadian CED network. We're a national association with several hundred community organizations and individuals working to create local economic opportunities that support a sustainable and inclusive economy. Here are a few of the members' logos. If you like today's session, please do consider becoming a member. Please do consider signing up for the free e-newsletters. This webinar is part of a series. Past sessions have included topics such as social return on investment, the resilience imperative, social impact bonds, financial management for sustainability, mutuals for microfinance, and many others. All of the past sessions are archived on the CEDNet website. We're very fortunate today to have a stellar lineup of presenters from 6 different research programs around Canada. And today we're having a 1-hour webinar, and we have a half-hour question session at the end, which is longer than normal. In the first hour, we'll have presentations from each of our speakers, and then we'll have time for questions after that. So again, please do feel free to post your questions and comments in the chat box at any time. Before we get started with the presentations, Mike is going to quickly pull up 2 little polls. This is just to give our presenters and all of you who are listening a quick sense of who's participating in the webinar. So there are 2 little questions there. The one is, say who you are, defined as what you do, and then a question about what are your primary motivations or interests in this webinar. So I see people are filling that out. That's great. Well, the social economy research program was a national research program that ran from 2005 until 2012. It was a wonderful opportunity for research all across Canada on various aspects of the social economy. One of the things that I think we've learned from reflecting on that experience is that the nature of the partnerships that we had for research in place had a really powerful impact on the kind of research that was done and how successful that research was. And so one of the questions that we've really pondered within the CEDNet Research Committee is how is that research being taken forward? How are those partnerships that were built under the social economy research suite, how are they informing and shaping research that has come since then? And of course, what has happened is that in many parts of the country, partnerships that were formed as part of, or perhaps even before the social economy research program, have continued in new research partnerships. And that's really what we'd like to address today. What are these research partnerships doing around the country? Who's involved, and what can we expect from them as they roll out their research? There are many projects to cover, and so we've asked our presenters to keep their presentations really short today. The idea here is that they will introduce their research program, they'll say who's involved in the partnership, identify the questions that are being asked, what results are already available, what results might be expected, and most importantly, how people can get involved in using and perhaps even shaping the research that's done. And so I'm going to hand over to our first presenter in a moment. Looks to me as though we're a combination of people who are both users and producers of research. And it seems as though we have an interest both in how research can inform practice and policy, as well as how research can inform theory. And I think you'll find that there's something that addresses all of those needs in all of the presentations that we're going to hear today. So with that, by way of introduction, I'd like to turn to our first presenter. Our first presenter is Erin Hancock. She's the Manager of Research and Education at the Canadian Cooperative Association. She's standing in today for Denise Guy, who unfortunately is sick. And together with Denise, Erin is responsible for the Measuring the Cooperative Difference Research Network. Thank you for joining us, Erin. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Peter. So Denise Guy is our principal investigator for this research network. We are anchored here at the Canadian Cooperative Association, and Denise is the executive director at CCA currently, and she certainly sends her regrets for not being able to join us today. But I'm happy to fill in and share some information with you and take your questions too. So the focus of our research network is really to measure the social, economic, environmental impact of co-ops, looking specifically at Canadian communities. So we are, as we all know, we talk about the co-op difference all the time, the impact that co-ops have on their communities, and we wanted to find ways that we could measure this and give really strong evidence to this and look at that triple bottom line. So we were funded by SSHRC in 2010, and our funding runs until 2015, and we've got a $1 million grant. So Sonia Novkovich at St. Mary's University is Denise's right-hand person, and so she is the academic co-director for the network. And I'm sure many of you have heard of Sonia. She was one of the leads on the economics, the Imagine 2012 Economics Conference that happened in Quebec City last fall. And so how we've divided our research governance structure in a sense is that we've got 4 clusters. So we've got an Atlantic cluster, and there our leadership is Leslie Brown at Mount St. Vincent University, and also Peter Huff from the Canadian Worker Co-op Federation. We've got a Prairie cluster, and also this includes Cape Breton University, just because the researcher who was first in the Prairies, then moved to CBU, so it's a bit of a stretch for the Prairies, but it seems to work out. And so we've got Dr. Lou Hammond-Kettleson at the University of Saskatchewan, the director of the Centre for the Study of Co-ops, and also Jessica Gordon-Nembard with the City University of New York, and Myrna Hewitt, who is with Affinity Credit Union, one of their senior managers. And we also have Catherine Levitin-Reid, who is at Cape Breton University, and Carla Scutajan with the Cooperative Housing Federation of Canada. And then we have a Western cluster with Ana Maria Paredo, who is the director of the Centre for Cooperative and Community-Based Economy at the University of Victoria, and John Ristakis with the British Columbia Cooperative Association. And then we have a national cluster, which you'll see when I introduce the projects, really took in all of the projects that are broader in scope or didn't fit with the themes of the other clusters. And so we have Dr. Luke Theriault from University of New Brunswick in Fredericton, and Fiona Dogood, who we have as our sort of researcher in residence here at the Canadian Cooperative Association. Okay, so highlight some of our additional partners. I won't go through all of them in detail, but we've actually had over 100 people involved in some way in our network, and these are some of the folks who are leads on projects right now. So we're really grateful to all of the universities, the researchers, and the co-ops and associations who have put forward energy and people and ideas to making this all possible. So just to give you a quick rundown of the project, we have a lot of projects. We have 18 active projects, and because of that, we have quite a diversity of scope in terms of what we're looking at. And so I won't get into the full detail, but I will direct you to our website for more information at cooperativedifference.coop. But just to summarize, in our Atlantic cluster, there's a real focus on looking at tool development and really focusing in on individual co-ops in terms of the research that's being undertaken. At our Prairie cluster, we're really looking sector-specific. So we've got a focus on credit unions, one of our projects with Dr. Lou Hammond-Kettleson, and we've also got a focus on housing cooperatives, and that's with Carla with the Cooperative Housing Federation of Canada and Catherine Levitin-Reid at CBU. Then looking at our Western cluster projects, these have quite a diversity. So there's a bit of focus on privilege and oppression. We have a project out of there specifically looking at provincial policy, and we're also looking at cooperative culture and organizational behavior, and that's underway right now with John Ristakis, and it's quite interesting. And then, like I mentioned before, with the national cluster, we have a number of different projects that didn't fit in the thematic areas of the other clusters or are broader in scope than just a region. And so through this, you'll see there there's quite a diversity, and one of the biggest ones that I think we're most excited about at this time is the national study on the impact of co-ops, which is a very large undertaking and is one that we're excited to get people involved and get feedback. In terms of the outputs and things that we've accomplished so far since we've been operating since 2010, once we got up and running, we did publish a book on the Sussex Co-op. So they had celebrated their 170-year anniversary, which if you look at other publications on co-ops, it really does point to them as being one of the oldest cooperatively organized associations in the world. Also, we've undertaken a Nova Scotia co-op impact study, so we've got a draft paper on that, and soon we'll be able to release that to the public. So that was an input-output analysis of the co-op sector in Nova Scotia. We've done a impact methodologies assessment, so that's now complete, and we'll be publishing some work on that soon, basically looking at how can we accurately showcase and capture the breadth of the impact of cooperatives. And then we've done several national and international conferences through our network, and certainly we've been involved in organizing some of those conferences as well. We've done 15 public webinars, and some of you may be familiar with them. All of the videos are available on our website. And we've also produced a co-op policy paper on renewable energy. That's with J.J. McMurtry of York University and also Judith Lip of the Trek Renewable Energy Co-op. And we did produce a paper on agricultural co-ops, which will be up on our website soon. That was analyzing the data from the previous Rural and Co-op Secretariat in their annual study. And out of the Atlantic cluster, we've got two very interesting tools, the Co-op Index tool and the Cooperative Sustainability Reporting and Planning Practice tool, looking at the adherence to the co-op principles and the other looking at performance and planning. In terms of our intended outputs, we have a publication that gives an update on all of those projects and the results that we've collected to date. That will be available digitally, and also we can mail copies as well. So that will happen later this month. And we've also we've got this national study on the impact of co-ops that is just getting some legs right now. And we're looking to organize an international tools conference, and Dr. Sonia Nalkovich is taking a lead on this. And what we want to do is bring together all of the innovative tools that co-ops can use for governance and for operations, for performance, and these kinds of things. We are doing a number of special journal editions from the research that will be produced and completed over the next couple of years. And we have a policy project that we can, in fact, mobilize all of the lessons from here that have policy relevance to the various stakeholders. So just to say to you, we'd love to have you involved. There are lots of ways to become involved with us. We do have our website, the cooperativedifference.coop website. We do quarterly newsletters. One was just released earlier this week. You'll find that on the main page of the website. We offer 6 free webinars every year. And like I said, we record those and put the materials from those up online. And right now we're seeking a few folks to get involved. So we're looking for volunteers that can help us with our dissemination and communication. So folks that have experience in design and infographic and those kinds of things. We're also looking for practitioners that have tools that are currently being used by co-op enterprises or things that are in development that can contribute towards the tools conference. And we're also looking for practitioners that have knowledge of co-op educational initiatives. And because we are looking to develop a lifelong learning strategy, that's a bit of the practical aspect of what it is that we're doing out of some of our research scanning co-op educational initiatives across Canada. So thank you so much, and I'll look forward to your questions later.
Thanks so much, Erin, and thanks for staying on time. That's great, already seeing many ways for people to get involved. Next up is Jack Corder. Jack is professor at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education at the University of Toronto, and he is co-director of the Social Economy Centre. He's currently principal investigator in the Social Business and Marginalized Social Groups project, and that builds on a track record of many successful research partnerships. Welcome, Jack.
Okay, thank you for the kind introduction, Peter, and to Mike and CCEDNet for the opportunity to participate. I'll say first that the Social Economy Center is a direct outgrowth of the SSHRC funding that was referred to in the very beginning of the webinar from 2005 to 2011 or 12, and the creation of the center occurred shortly after we received the grant, and the creation of ANSWER, which Peter Elson is going to talk about, is also a function of that funding to a great extent, as is the ANSWER journal. However, I'll talk about our work, our center. The Social Economy Center's primary function is to serve as a bridge between the university and organizations in the surrounding community. The center has a monthly speaker series, but unlike most university speaker series, the presenters are from the community, that is outside of the university. In other words, we bring speakers external to the university into the university. So yesterday, for example, we had a great panel from Tides of Canada. Does very innovative work in serving as an infrastructure for many nonprofit projects. And all of our speakers' presentations are archived, and they can be found on our website, and the live presentations are available online in real time. So we'll be starting our speaker series again next September, and they're usually on Wednesdays at noon Toronto time. We also have a workshop series designed for leaders of nonprofit organizations and cooperatives, and offering training in activities such as human resource management, marketing, board of directors issues, legal issues. And through the workshops, the participants can obtain a certificate that might have some professional value to them. The center has a sizable research program funded by the Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada, SSHRC. Our research projects include an ongoing project on volunteering in nonprofit organizations, and specifically attempting to understand the circumstances under which nonprofits interchange employees and volunteers. We also have an ongoing line of research on cooperatives, and in particular understanding why credit unions locate in particular parts of the country, and the initial research was done in Canada. Now we're undertaking comparative research in the U.S. Our main project, and the one to which Peter referred when he introduced me, and the one upon which I'm going to focus, is the SSHRC Cura project, Community University Research Alliance, that Peter referred to by the formal name, but we label as the Business with a Difference project. And you can see it on our website. And the name comes from an edited collection that we published in 2012 with the University of Toronto Press called Business with a Difference. So we like that we're using it for our research as well. The project is complex, and it's over 5 years, so in a few minutes I can't go into all the details, but in brief, the project attempts to understand the impact of what we refer to as social purpose enterprises upon their primary stakeholders. By social purpose enterprises, we mean a variant of a social enterprise that serves marginalized social groups, people with disabilities, developmental or psychiatric, youth without sufficient schooling and training to access the workforce or having different challenges in accessing the workforce, recent immigrants who are on the margins of the workforce, Aboriginal groups, etc. Even though these enterprises participate in the market and earn income from it, they rely heavily upon a parenting organization for support and generally receive a substantial portion of their revenues from government programs of one sort or another and foundations in some cases. We just completed 13 case studies of social purpose enterprises, predominantly in the Greater Toronto area. The social purpose enterprises were partners to the research, so it wasn't a conventional research relationship of just collecting data from groups that don't participate, and they participated in it. Planning, the execution, the write-up, and a manuscript with the case studies has been submitted to the University of Toronto Press for review just recently, and we're now preparing 2-page fact sheets on each of the case studies for our website. In brief, very brief, the findings of our research indicate that even though the participants in the organizations derive some financial benefit, the main benefit is in terms of human capital or skills development and social capital or the broadening of their social networks. This was a very consistent and important finding. Often people on the social margins are highly isolated, and through participating in a social purpose enterprise, they meet others and extend their networks. The next stage of the project involves the following activities. First, creating case study write-ups in a format that might be picked up in business schools and faculties of management. And we're having a workshop on this on May the 10th to get some tutoring on how to best do this. Second, creating a formal social return on investment for each of the case studies and developing a policy document from this research, so that's an extension of the case study work. Third, assisting each of the organizations to develop through engaging consultants that will be paid for by the project. So we're hiring. We have a team of consultants we're hiring to help with organizational development and change with each of the case study organizations that want to partake of this. Not all of them have volunteered for that. And then the fourth, and probably the largest initiative, is building an online interactive system, platform, I think as it's called, with a YouTube mechanism that will feature specific case studies and will offer the opportunity for reproduction of them or replication, I guess, by other organizations. We've already started the planning for this, and eventually we would like to obtain funds to hire an animator who can work in the field with the organizations that are interested in this replication process. We have quite a large group of partners, and Peter, can I read them all, or am I out of time?
If you could just maybe sketch the scope of them, and then we should move on.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, we work with the Toronto Enterprise Fund, Social Purpose Enterprise Network, Ontario Cooperative Association, and then it's a mishmash after that: Alternate Credit Union, Away Express, Common Ground Cooperative, Food Share, and its Good Food Markets, Furniture Bank and Furniture Link, Sistering and its Inspiration Studios, Learning Enrichment Foundation and its 18 child care centers, Ms. Beak, Aboriginal Employment and Training, and its micro-lending program, Northwood Translation Bureau, and Libra Information Services, Working Skills Center, and the Academy for Community and Employment Skills, and Group Convex in southeastern Ontario. It's the one case study outside of Toronto, and I think I'm over time, so I'm going to stop. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jack. Next up is Mike Gismondi. Mike is a professor at Athabasca University, and he's the principal investigator on the BALTA, or the BC Alberta Social Economy Research Alliance, on the BALTA Scaling Innovation for Sustainability Research Project. Mike.
Mike might have us on mute. It's *6 to unmute the phone.
Yeah, the distance ed professor forgets the rules. Yeah. So thanks. I'm pleased to give you an update on the work we've been doing in Western Canada and across Canada and with some colleagues in the United Kingdom. This is a new project. It's a partnership development grant. It's about 8 months into a 2-year cycle of, as Peter said, shaping and designing a research program and in building a network. And the focus it seems to be emerging, is between colleagues in Canada and the United Kingdom. And I'll just give you a sense of that. The leads are Mike Lewis and Anna Maria Prado, and Noel Keogh from Calgary, myself, Stuart Wolf, who many of you know, and I would say that the shadow lead is Pat Connaughton on the UK side. What we're primarily looking at is not simply the crossover of social economy and sustainability, but we're focusing on efforts to replicate or scale up or scale out proven innovations in 4 areas: food, energy, housing, and finance. And as we've been discussing, a few more will have emerged, and I'll show you a few of those on the next slide. I want to spend a couple minutes on this, what I call the starting premises slide. Really, we're really focusing on these 3 drivers: climate change, peak oil or energy fluctuations, and financial uncertainties as macro contexts in which we're doing this work. We're asserting that social economics is connected to all aspects of sustainability, so we have a list of the kinds of things we're looking at and how they interact. And then the most important statement, I think, of framing is that we're arguing that the social economy is bringing something new to the strategic directions of the politics of sustainability that's occurring globally. That there is something in the potential blending or mixing or cross-fertilization of the 2 fields of what I would call transition studies or sustainability studies and the engagement with sustainability by the social economy itself. That's very promising. Those are the bits we're looking at. We're not naive about the problems in both fields, but we're really excited about the potential emerging in that cross-fertilization. And what we're doing right now is trying to broaden engagement with some of the ideas coming out of the 2 fields. I guess some of those you may have heard about when Mike Lewis spoke about his book that he wrote with Pat Connaughton called The Resilience Imperative. And we have a second book which came out of the original BALTA research, which is, I suppose, designed by the group of us in that network who came from a sustainability or a green politics background and engaged social economy, many of us for the first time 6 years ago. So we came at it slightly differently and discovered something quite exciting, and that's how we brought the 2 pieces together. We're talking again about 2 things here: scaling out and scaling up, and we make some distinctions about that. And I listed just a number of the key questions that we're looking at, which I would call more strategic questions about opportunity identification, and then some of the theoretical issues. So we currently have 3 research clusters. One, it's called community-based initiatives, which is basically looking at grassroots niches and how they're scaling out. Micro, meso, and macro, which I'm the lead on, and I'm working with about 14 people across the country and in the UK, and Mike Toy is one of those. We're looking at the multiple dynamics that occur between the different dimensions, and we're also very interested in focusing on that role of the intermediaries and intermediary structures and systems. And Mike Lewis is leading a group around financing transition. As I said, we have these 4 focus areas: food, shelter, energy, and I'm calling it capital here for finance. And out of that, the discussions to date so far, it's interesting, we spent a lot of time thinking about land reform and land tenure, problems of financing change, localizing ownership, and questions of democracy in each of these cases we've been looking at. And broadly, the diffusion of knowledge, and we've had a very creative discussion around issues of even scaling up and scaling out, which we've tried to move away from as concepts, which are quite Fordist and very much attached to a manufacturing type language. Even the words diffusion, we've sort of moved off of that because that's a social technical systems kind of language, and we've been talking about more generative words for thinking about growing or evolving or spreading innovation in the social economy sector. So part of it, the work we're doing is around language and naming and what I would call, coming from Alberta, a pipeline of knowledge. How's that? So, here's some of the work we've been doing. So some of the things that have been emerging in our smaller group work is, first of all, one that will interest some of you is the strategic connection of innovations across sectors. Particularly, we've been looking at things like community land trusts, which emerged from the conservation field and then moved to affordable housing, are now being used in local food and farmland protection strategies, urban agricultural strategies, some alternative energy strategies. So we're looking at tracing how these innovations like the land trust as a way to bundle and bring together land and get it out of the market, how it's being used. We're looking at a series of financing models that are from small local capital, and we're also engaging with a number of colleagues in Britain on a discussion around macro capital issues and how those dynamics work. And you can see the other areas are probably very familiar to you all, and I won't read them all out to you. But there's an exciting list, and it goes on. And I'll just tell you a couple of other things we've been looking at. Strategically right now, we're looking at identifying opportunities for projects that we would accompany in this. We're going to make a proposal, obviously, for a 5-year funding to I think, to explore some of the depths of some of these theoretical framings, but also to work with practitioners on opportunity identification. And the strategy is to accompany and do research alongside that would be beneficial to some of the projects that are trying to scale out or scale up or diffuse these innovations. We've done 2 conceptual webinars this winter, one with Pat Conity and one with Robin Murray from England. And we had one about 10 days ago on the farm land trust models that are occurring in British Columbia. And there's one right now at the same time as this session on unleashing local capital, which is a local capital retention strategy. And we have upcoming ones, I think, from Tim's group on macroeconomics, the work they're doing in England around that topic. And we've invited a speaker to come in to talk about integrating carbon reduction into social enterprise practice. So this is really an invitation for those of you who are interested in these kinds of ideas to get in touch with us. We have a number of researchers across the country, but most of us are in Western Canada. And gives you a sort of a broad brushstrokes what we're up to. And there's a great website or a WordPress site with the recorded webinars are there, but also all the detailed sort of frameworks that I've been talking about are laid out on that website. You can check those out. You can contact any of the leads to discuss involvement. Or if you work in community projects that might want to participate and collaborate, we welcome that.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mike, and thank you for putting the question of language on the table. That's definitely something we're trying to assist with this webinar, is make sure that we can all talk to each other and understand each other. So next up is Ted Jackson and Jerry Briggs. Ted is an associate professor at Carleton University, and he's principal investigator on the Community First Impacts of Community Engagement Research Project, and they have a nice acronym for that. And Jerry is director of the Canadian Alliance for Community Service Learning and co-manager of the Community First Project. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks very much, and thanks to CCEDNet for organizing this. It's a great initiative. Just very briefly, we have a project here that is in its first year of implementation. It's called SUFFICE, Community First, Impacts of Community Engagement. And the focus of the project is we are really interested in documenting and analyzing the best practices of campus community partnerships. So we say campus because it also includes colleges as well as universities. And we have some core partners here that are co-managing the project. Jerry, which at the moment is the director of the Canadian Alliance for Community Service Learning. A number of the other partners include Vibrant Communities, the Trent Centre for Community-Based Education, Food Secure Canada, and the Canadian Association of Elizabeth Fry Societies. We have $2.5 million from SSHRC for a partnership project over the next 7 years. So we'll all be quite old by the time it's done, but we're engaging younger people as well. We have a lot of students involved in particular. So we talk about the aim of the project is really strengthening Canadian communities through action research on best practices in partnerships. We have also a research question that we're looking at that each of the hubs, which I'll talk about in a moment, are dealing with. So the core question is, how can community campus engagement be designed and implemented in ways that maximize the value created for nonprofit community-based organizations? And we're interested in exploring this in 4 domain areas. So we have research hubs in the area of poverty reduction, community food security, community environmental sustainability, and violence against women. And they're co-managed hubs which are using decentralized decision-making. They have their own networks, they have a budget, and they are organizing and sponsoring specific local and regional projects to test how partnerships work, what are some of the obstacles, what are some of the ways of maximizing impacts in their particular domain areas. And then we have a 5th hub, which is called Knowledge Mobilization, which Jerry also directs, which is actually working to disseminate and to produce all kinds of popular and academic knowledge on this work. So we also have co-managed and co-chaired structures, a steering committee that oversees the project, a program committee that really is driving really the programmatic engine of the project, which is all the co-leads of the hubs. And then we have a secretariat at Carleton where Castle and Carleton are collaborating.
And of course, you know, with the broader question of how can campus community engagement be designed and implemented for value for the not-for-profit communities, there's also the sub-questions of scale and replication. So what does this look like from the community-based organization perspective as opposed to the campus perspective? What do the issues of shared leadership, leadership control, how does that all work? And where does this fit within university and college governance and evaluation? How do we go about measuring the impact of these partnerships? Because the partnerships are only a very small part of what the actual organizations do. So how do you measure an impact of something so small? Well, and as well, what are some of the ethical issues? We also have a suffice logic model, which we will not go through. But as you will see at the very end, the impact is more successful, innovative, prosperous, and resilient communities. And looking at strengthened public policies in the thematic areas that Ted identified earlier, strengthened partnership capacity with community-based organizations, and as well strengthened capacity at campuses to do good community engagement. And looking at developing a critical mass of leaders in the community engagement field, and as well supporting pan-Canadian networks involved in community engagement. This is still me. Anyway, as you can see, we have at the top, those are the items that I just mentioned in terms of our outcomes that we're aiming for. Suffice is a relatively new project. We just opened our doors last August. And so primarily right now for products, the types of things we have available are the products that we're using to get ourselves organized, to get ourselves started. We have several projects that are just coming to closure, and papers and presentations and hopefully infographics and blogs and all sorts of other things will be coming out of those shortly. Some of the anticipated products that we may have in future, policy briefs, workshops, conferences, we invite you to come to them. Papers, tools, guides, recommendations, social networking, and of course, very important is developing a learning community of people within the project, as well as people in communities and on campuses who have an interest in this topic of how do we really make this work for communities. All right. I'll go ahead. It's your turn.
Okay. So just to say that, again, each of these hubs have sub-projects that they fund and monitor and support. And there are all kinds of projects involved. We're working in about 7 provinces and in rural and small towns, as well as medium-sized cities. These projects are in the case of Food Secure Canada and some of its work in the Food Security Hub, focusing on Indigenous forms and non-Indigenous forms of food security measures, looking at the Waterloo region food system efforts, looking at all kinds of other examples, focus on universities as well. We have a project based at Ryerson that is looking at 7 universities and the role of student-driven procurement systems to address issues on campuses themselves. And you can see there are a number of other projects that are on that list. It's pretty clear, I think, and I won't go through this list either, but there are all kinds of potential links between the Suffice research work and CED and the social economy. It isn't our immediate goal to develop those links, but I think they're going to be happening quite naturally, and we would invite you to explore those with us. But everything from living wage policies and affordable housing issues, which are coming out of the, not surprisingly, out of the Poverty Reduction Hub, to national food policy, something we don't have in Canada, coming out of Food Secure Canada, and many other things that you can relate to, and we would welcome dialogue with you on. So thank you very much. Everybody adjust your sets. We're using, this is not just in this case, but we're using this concept of theory of change, and we're actually moving from a more rigid logic model approach to theory of change approach. But this one is really trying to capture some of the elements involved in what universities and colleges do, which can contribute to what we call, sustainable, inclusive regional economic development. And obviously, there are connections here in many areas with the social economy and CED. But to understand what universities can do, for example, they do a lot of procurement, and that procurement could actually be directed to a more social economic orientation and a sustainability orientation. In some cases it is happening. Universities also and colleges invest. They're big on real estate, and they could do more in the community. So that is an interesting feature of all this. So I'll just leave this to you to ponder, but we're very interested in those issues, obviously, and we look forward to talking with you about them.
And so what we would like to end with is an invitation. Please join us. We have a blog spot available. We are encouraging people to share their experiences, their knowledge, their questions on community campus engagement, how it works, how it's made good outcomes for communities. We also have a forum that's available. It's all brand new, and we are looking for people to come and share with us. And you can contact us at either of those emails or do visit our website at communityfirst.org. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ted and Jerry, for telling us about CFICE. I'm glad that I now know how to pronounce that really neat acronym correctly. CFICE. Okay, our second to last speaker is Lynn Fernandez. Lynn is Research Associate for the Center for Canadian Policy Alternatives in Manitoba, and she is the Project Coordinator for Partnering for Change. And this is another project that builds on a really long track record of CURAs in Manitoba. Welcome, Lynn.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to give you a quick background on the Manitoba Research Alliance. And just let me see if I can figure out how to advance this thing, and I'll be in business. There we go. The Manitoba Research Alliance has been together for quite a while now, and we're going to be together for quite a bit longer, as I'll explain. And we bring together academics and community organizations, and our goal is really to study and promote policy solutions for inner city and Aboriginal poverty. Our primary function is to act as a bridge between academics and the community. I think I've heard that goal before, or that function before, so it seems to be a popular one. And we're really concerned that the community's voice can come through very loud and clear in our research. We do this through 4 research streams, which I will explain a little later. We have successfully put together 3 community-based, community-led research proposals and have had 3 SSHRC grants. We have been able to produce numerous books and publications as well as videos which outline the depth of poverty and causes and possible solutions. And always, as always, our focus is on solutions that are community-based. Our publications get disseminated through a Manitoba Research Alliance website and also through the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternative website. The fact that we've had SSHRC funding throughout our 3 grants has really allowed us to produce many reports and books, etc. Now, the MRA is sort of housed, if you will, or works through the CCPA in Manitoba. It's our lead organization. And we also have the 2 main universities in Manitoba, or at least in Winnipeg, I guess I should say, the University of Manitoba and the University of Winnipeg, and many community organizations, mainly based in Winnipeg, but throughout the province. We also have the support of the provincial government, and we get the community's voice through the policy makers. And once again, there's a bridge, and that's another bridge, if you will. We bridge the community's voice into the province and make sure that we push through policy change that's actually meaningful to the community groups that we work with. So once again, community, community, community. It's really the central focus of what we're doing. And sometimes we have to push this with some of our academic researchers more than others. It's sometimes difficult for a researcher to think, well, we want to concentrate on research that comes from the community. The community is actually the one who gives us our research ideas and helps us do it. And I don't know, maybe I'm saying this too strongly to say that the MRA is unique in this, but we don't, we haven't found a lot of other organizations that work as closely with the community as ours does. Just quickly, we've had these three different grants. We'll have a total of 15 years of SSHRC grant once we're done this one that we're on now, which is the $2.5 million 7-year grant, and it's a partnership grant. And so by the time we put all these 3 grants together, we'll have 15 years of doing research through SSHRC funding. And our theme has been pretty much the same throughout the 3, and because the issues we're dealing with are so complex, we really do need at least that much time to delve into a lot of this. And this next, this grant that we have now, the 7-year one, we hope is going to give us the opportunity to delve into some more longitudinal studies, which is something that we haven't been able to do up until now. And it's actually, in many ways taking us a few years just to figure out the complexity of the problems. Just a quick rundown of the key people involved in our grant or in the MRA. Dr. John Loxley, whom I think a lot of you know, and our research stream heads are Dr. Jim Silver from the University of Winnipeg, Shauna McKinnon, who I think many of you know, who is a director here at CCPA, but whom we're going to be losing soon. She's going on to the U of W. And John Loxley is head of our CED stream, and Elizabeth Comack is head of our Justice stream. Just a quick sample of some of our 60-plus partners. Obviously, I couldn't list them all. You'll notice there's one important partner right here, the Canadian CD Network, Manitoba. The Manitoba office, Brendan Reimer, has been an important partner with us throughout these grants, and we've done a couple or several research projects with them. We also have some First Nations this time, which is the primary difference between, or one of the differences between this grant and the other 2, is we're really branching out of the urban setting and trying to engage more with First Nations. Particularly, we've even got a couple of more remote ones in Manitoba that we hope to be working with. And once again, we've got some, quite a bit of provincial representation as well. Our research streams are justice, safety, and security, and housing and community revitalization, education, training, and capacity building, and CET. Just to give you a flavor of some of the research that goes on in those 3 streams. In the first one, the justice, safety, and security, we'll be looking at such things in this grant, this current grant, as transformative justice strategies, looking at Indian residential school settlement agreements, violence in the home, community-based safety strategies, because safety and security are fundamentally a community issue. So we don't necessarily have our research projects all hammered out. Obviously, for 7 years, we've got a long time to go. So we are still in the process of looking for researchers who will take on some of these projects for us, but we will also entertain, if somebody has a proposal that they think fits into our larger mandate, we also entertain project proposals for ideas perhaps that we haven't come up with yet. In housing and neighborhood revitalization, we're looking at things like housing advocacy, Aboriginal worldviews, housing linkages, because housing is so central to our work, and so key, it's such a causal link to other issues that people living on the margins can have. It's an economic generator as well, and it can be used in a CED strategy involving local employment and training combined with cultural components. So there's all kinds of possibilities for research there. And in the CED stream, so I guess I should do the education and training first. We really concentrate a lot on second chance Aboriginal learners and the importance of education and the importance of decolonization and education for Aboriginal people, and also looking at the importance of early childhood development. the Healthy Child Initiative, Head Start programs. There's a program called Pathways to Education that helps adolescents with their education, and there's a new stream of that that's dealing specifically with Aboriginal students in the north end of Winnipeg, and we've been involved in that and want to do more research around that. And as I said, the Second Chance Aboriginal learners, adults who have dropped out of school in adolescence and return as adults or second chance learners. And Shauna McKinnon's done a lot of research on that, and will probably be doing some more together with Jim Silver and engaging other community partners that we have here in Winnipeg in that research. In community economic development, we want to look at the challenges and opportunities for CED organizations. We've already got a couple of projects, I think, that are going to be looking at cooperatives. Interesting from an Aboriginal perspective is looking at the impact of resource flows and inflows, and the work that Manitoba Hydro has been doing in Manitoba around dam construction and getting Aboriginal people engaged, working, training them for jobs. And the criticism has been that they haven't really been trained for good, sustainable jobs in the past, and we would like to do some research around seeing how we could improve that and sort of help Manitoba Hydro get Aboriginal First Nations more involved on a meaningful level and give them some long-term employment and training. Developing a new CED model, I think this one is really exciting. We've already looked at the promise of the UNESCO. We have a bid in for a UNESCO World Heritage Site here on the east side of Lake Winnipeg, and Aboriginal communities were very much involved in the development of that site. If we get the UNESCO World Heritage Site, there were a few of them who are really looking at a CED strategy that is designed to preserve both the environment and the community's heritage. So there's very much a cultural component in that as well. And it presents an alternative to resource-based development. So that's something that we're going to be following. Hopefully we'll get that designation because it'll provide a really interesting research opportunity. And another exciting one in CED is the labor market, and looking, that stream will work in conjunction with the capacity building and education stream to look at labor market intermediaries, which is something that came out of our last two short grants looked at that. So once again, there's a theme that has been carried through the three grants, and sort of our research builds as we go through. So that'll be hopefully another exciting project that we'll take on. We really feel that the secret to our success is our real partnership with the community and the academy and government. And I think that our yearly State of the Inner City report is an excellent example of our work. We've done it for 8 years in a row. The community chooses a topic, the community participates in putting the report together, and every year we have a yearly launch at a community event, and community members and policymakers participate. You can find that on our website, which I'll be giving. All the copies of that are on our website. We really do push policy in our stuff. We take our report ideas to advocacy groups like Make Poverty History Manitoba, and they implement campaigns. An example of that is our EI rental rate increase campaign that we've been working on for the past year. That policy recommendation came out of this publication, The Truth About Consequences, and the link is here if anybody wants to go to it. And we've been working on that campaign for over a year, and we were really keen to see how it would play out in the provincial budget, which came down a couple of days ago. We were somewhat disappointed in the response, but actually we just had a briefing with some provincial people today to try to do a bit of damage control, I suppose, on that. And Brendan Reimer and Kirsten Bernas from the CCEDNet were very involved in that as well. So, I think the secret to our success is a willingness of academic members really to move beyond the confines of traditional academic research and work with the community as equal partners. Our success is also based, I think, on the credibility we have with government and our ability to push the community ideas through credible research that then goes to the government, and then our ability also to plug into the advocacy community so that they can push to get some actual changes in policy. And so we're not just talking about this stuff, we actually see some action. That's the website. It gives some background on all 3 of our initiatives. All the reports that we have published to date are on that, and as new reports come up, they'll be put on. Also, if, of course, as I said, we're happy to entertain other research proposals, and people just need to get in touch with me if they're interested in connecting, and I will make sure they get the proper information so they know how to plug into us. Be very interested in looking for ways to connect with any of the groups that are participating today in terms of getting people involved in upcoming conferences. And I'm starting to get quite intrigued by this whole webinar idea, because it's difficult to think of how we're going to reach some of our more remote partners now in the North, our First Nations. So maybe this is the way, and maybe we could include some other people as well. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Lynn. And last but not least is Peter Elton. Peter is the Acting Director at the Institute for Nonprofit Studies at Mount Royal University in Calgary. He's a board member on ANSA, commonly known the Association for Nonprofit and Social Economy Research, and that's an important organization that's been built out of the social economy research. He's also the English language editor for the ANSA Journal. Peter's going to speak very briefly about the organization as a forum for ongoing exchange and sharing of research. Over to you, Peter.
Great. Thank you, Peter, and good morning, afternoon. Here in Calgary, it's 11 o'clock, and I'm aware that it's lunchtime or less or more in other parts of the country. Thanks for the introduction, and I'll be as brief as possible. Answer was founded in 2007, and we're registered as federally as in the Nonprofit Incorporations Act, and we are just in the process of we've completed our application for charitable tax status, and that is under review. We're hoping that we'll get a positive outcome. And Answer is open to anyone with an interest in research that pertains broadly to the nonprofit organizations in the social economy. And as Jack mentioned right at the outset, that certainly the participation in Answer was seriously boosted by the social economy cura, because it provided not only the papers and the research, but also the finances for people to attend at least the first 2 or 3 Answer conferences, which certainly provided a very important impetus as far as our critical mass of people is concerned. Obviously, that varies. But we certainly continue to welcome people, and I know that there are a number of papers that will be presented at the Answer conference in Victoria that are related to not only Cura-related research work, but also the number of other activities that have been noted this morning. Basically, we're a network of researchers. Those of us that were instrumental in founding Answer really saw a need. We were frankly tired of having to travel south of the border to meet each other, and realized that in fact there was now a critical mass of discussion and research that was taking place, and we have been really delighted with the amount of participation and the number of people that have been involved with Answer since its outset. It's very broad constituency, and as I said, we have everyone from charity-related lawyers to community development people, co-op-related researchers, volunteer management people, so it's a very broad spectrum and really reflects the broad multidisciplinary nature of research. But I would say almost to a person that people feel very comfortable and at home within the venues and the activities created by Answer for research collaboration and exchange. there are four main activities that ANSWER is involved with. Obviously, our annual conference, which is held near the end of May, beginning of June each year, in collaboration with the Congress for Humanities and Social Sciences. It will continue to do so. So we'll be back in Ontario, I believe, St. Catharines next year. When it moves, and we move across the country accordingly, and it gives an opportunity for people not only to present papers with ANSWER, but also CASC, as well as the Canadian Political Science Association Conference and geography people and so forth. Which is just fine. We have a member newsletter that is published twice a year that goes out and provides a summary of both key events as well as ANSWER-related activities, and that goes out to members. We also have an e-list which is restricted to members, and it provides an opportunity for people to bring key events or to post research-related questions to people who are members of ANSWER. The fourth area, of which I'm one part, Francois Brouard, who's at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, is the French language editor. And this is an online, open access, dual language, which means it's not bilingual, but if articles are written in, submitted in French, then they're published in French, but we also provide an English and French abstract of of every article. And it's also peer reviewed. And we are really dedicated to knowledge dissemination. And in that regard, even though we've only published 5 issues, of which there are an average of 5 articles per issue, we have achieved over 41,000 downloads of our articles to date. So we feel that we're really making progress. 2 other areas that we're making progress, I think, in terms of the journal, is the fact we're starting to get ongoing, and I think a critical threshold of Aboriginal-related research. The flooding in Manitoba that was mentioned a few minutes ago will be one of the feature articles in the coming issue, which will be published next month. And we're delighted that Aboriginal scholars are starting to see the ANSWER Journal as a venue for their research. But as I said before, we publish any type of research as long as it's of appropriate quality and it has it's related to the nonprofit and social economy sector. I should just like to note at this point that because the Social Enterprise World Forum is taking place in Calgary this October from the 2nd to the 4th, that ANSWER J, the journal, is putting out a request that if we haven't done sort of dedicated specific topic issues, but we are very interested in anyone who has articles related to the social enterprises to consider writing them. And our deadline for the next issue is going to be September the 1st. So I would encourage anyone to think about submitting an article as soon as possible, and we'd be delighted to receive it and have it reviewed. I'd just like to close by referring you to our website, and people are welcome to go through it. There's a French and English site, so it's completely bilingual, and all the information is available on both sides. And I encourage you not only to peruse it, but also to echo other people that have presented. You're certainly welcome to join ANSWER, and the application form is right on the website. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much for that, Peter. So we've run a little bit over, but we do still have about 20 minutes for questions, and of course there's going to be opportunities for people to connect up with each other after the end of this webinar. We'll be unsyncing the presentation so that presenters you can move around the slides if you as you answer questions that come up, and to people who are listening in, participating, you can use the chat room to post your questions, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. I think the first question that has come up is that some of the participants have really drawn attention to a big debate within the Canadian CED network at the moment, and that is what is the place of CED in our current efforts, when so much of CED is conflated with social economy. And so the first question to the participants is, how do you, to the presenters, is how do you understand the relationship between those two concepts, CED and social economy? Do you see them as interchangeable? Do you see one as a technique or as a tactic to achieve the other? And how are you bringing that into your research? I think it would be, given some of the questions that have been asked, if we could ask Jack to kick off the response to that. And Jack, that would also be an opportunity to just restate for the participants the title of your latest book, Making Business. So Jack, can I ask you to kick off?
Well, the latest book is Businesses with a Difference. It's an edited collection. Lori Mook, Sharita Ryan, and myself, and the subtitle is Balancing the Social and the Economic, and it's University of Toronto Press. In terms of the question about CED and social economy, it's a good and important question, and in our framework, in our textbook, Canada's Social Economy, we view the CED as a component of the social economy. We see the social economy as a bridging concept for all of the different forms of activities that attempt to balance social and economic criteria. And we use a Venn diagram to illustrate different forms of interaction between organizations in the social economy and those in the private and public sectors. And we view CED as a form of activity that participates in the market, like private sector organizations, but unlike private sector organizations, relies on government programs, usually on an ongoing basis and sometimes on foundations, because in part it's serving groups that are on the social margins, or often in parts of the country where there are very, very high rates of unemployment. For example, Cape Breton, chronically high rates of unemployment. And the CED organizations, of course, take on the structure of organizations in the social economy. As a definition, we use the CEDNet in our textbook. We use the CEDNet definition. Yeah. So, but we emphasize the form of the interaction between organizations that are defined around CED, community development corporations and the like, and they participate in the market, but have ongoing forms of support from government programs.
Great, thank you. Do any of the other presenters want to jump in on this question on the relationship between social economy and CED?
Yeah, it's Lynn. I think we would pretty much adopt everything that was just said, and I would agree that CED is sort of something that happens within the social economy. But the one sort of stream of research that we've done through the Manitoba Research Alliance, and primarily John Loxley has done, he's looked very sort of critically at CED, and I mean, we've even gone so far as to try to develop a theory of CED, because there actually isn't one out there. And he asked the questions, or we even have a book out about whether CED is a means of transforming capitalism or reforming capitalism. And it gets to some really fundamental questions about when you're trying to have CED as an activity in the market, as was just said, and that it can work up to a certain point, and it can be quite functional, and you can maybe see some important changes within a community, but eventually does that sort of get sucked into the whole market system and then eventually start getting watered down. And so that's the only thing that I would add is there is that sort of larger question about CED and what its goal really is, and if it's just sort of reforming capitalism into something different, or is it just sort of a mechanism that we use to try to tweak the more egregious problems that we have within capitalism. So that's some of the research that we've done, and in our last SSHRT grant we did put a book out about that.
Great. Does anybody else want to weigh in on this?
What's the title of the book?
It's called Transforming or Reforming Capitalism Towards a Theory of Community Economic Development.
Who's the publisher?
Well, it's published by Fernwood Publishing.
Okay.
And it's edited by John Loxley. And in it, there's a theory of a political theory of community economic development, and there's a chapter towards an economic theory of community economic development.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
I think this ties up very importantly also with questions of language that Mike G, for instance, put on the table for us. What precisely do we mean, and what do people understand by
exactly
when we speak?
Exactly.
So with not hearing anything more on that issue,
Peter, it's Ted.
Great.
Can I just say a couple of things? Having watched the definitional debate for some time, and I've really been informed by Jack's work and by John Loxley's work. I guess I would add to the discussion that we're at a particular point in Canadian history, if you will, where there are certain factors that we haven't seen before. We haven't seen such a large group of people who are in the precariat, if you will, that are doing low-wage jobs, temporary jobs with no benefits. We have not seen a country, a national economy that has such little manufacturing in it, certainly in the center of the country. We have not seen an economy that where our governments are so strapped for cash, or at least under the current circumstances are strapped for cash, and where there's a lot of money in among elites, but that money is not getting invested. We have not seen a country, our national economy, which has, in a world that is really dominated by the BRICS in terms of the world economy, now with particularly China, India, and Brazil. So all I'm saying here by pointing this out is that whatever the definitional debates are, we have to understand that both CED and the social economy are operating in a very specific context. We also have the issue of job quality. And for the last 30 years or so, we've been debating this issue against the backdrop of a growth economy that had, looking back now, quite a lot of good quality jobs, which were more unionized, they had more benefits. Now we're dealing with an economy that is, where the job quality is lousy, and broadly speaking, with the exception of a few sectors and regions. So all that to say that social economy and CED, however they're defined, have to deliver, have to help us understand and respond to these particular contextual factors. And that's going to be more challenging, but I think it's exactly where we need to go. That's great.
Just adding to what Ted said, and I think it's very important, very fundamental characteristic of the economy today and society is the fact that young people have such great difficulty accessing the workforce, getting quality jobs, and even young people who go through the schooling hoop, so to speak, get degrees in teaching or whatever, which normally would allow them to get good quality jobs, are having great difficulty realizing those goals.
Yeah, for sure. It's Lynn again, and also the other element that's coming in globally is, of course, the temporary foreign workers, seasonal agricultural workers, getting back to the precarity of the labor market, and how all of this is possible because of an existing global political economy structure that is allowing these things to happen under free trade agreements, et cetera, et cetera. So it's, you know, there's just all kinds of context to this, right? Very complex.
Thank you. We've just had one more a slight elaboration of this question, so I just want to quickly direct this to Mike Gismondi and then move on to a different line of questions. And this was Mike. Could you speak a bit more about how synonymous CD and sustainability are?
I think it's the old mute.
I think Mike's on mute again.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm on the road, so I'm using a cell phone, which is driving me crazy. Well, I think the third leg of this discussion that we don't talk about as a meta, we haven't talked that much about as a meta driver is the ecological issue, right? And there is a convergence. I see it in more and more, not just the use of the word sustainability, but trying to integrate understandings. Let's say we're not just talking about affordable and attainable housing, we're talking about fuel poverty, or I call it utilities poverty, as one aspect of dealing with poverty now, so that it costs so much just to heat and maintain a home and to use utilities. And this is pushing the question into this, I call it, I think, a cross-fertilized area of the debates between transition away from a capitalist system that is deeply embedded in abusing the ecosystem and benefiting from free externalities and all the other aspects of the critiques that you'll find in the works by Loxley and others. So there are many large debates also about how do we relocalize in what people seem to believe will be an impending dysfunctional global system within the next 50 years, as energy depletes or becomes less consistently available or is priced out of our availability, or as climate change begins to affect us. So, and it's already affecting us. We know aspects of it are changing aspects of our lives, but those are all linked to food and food security, and I think the growing interest in those fields reflect some of the reflection that's going on by progressives concerned about bringing together these areas: food, shelter, energy, and alternatives. And I mean, it's multiple alternatives that trying to suture together some kind of oppositional language or discourse of an alternative. That's partly what I think the social economy structures can help move it forward more quickly, because there are some democratic models available within the field of social economy that could really strengthen the sustainability field.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So I'm going to change tack slightly, and this is a question that's partly inspired by what Ted and Jerry said from Ceasefire, and particularly what Erin in her invitation for people to become involved. So to Erin, what types of involvement are you looking for in the national impact of cooperatives? And then leading on from that to some of the other presenters, and specifically thinking of Ted and Jerry, what do you think our community-based organizations need to know when they're approached by universities, by academics to become part of partnerships, service learning, and other related activities?
Okay, so I can kick us off. Erin here. So your question was about the national study on the impact of co-ops, and certainly what we've been hoping is that we get enough of a diversity on. We've established an advisory committee, and that we get a diversity of folks on there that have some experience, certainly in economic methodologies, but also we are really keen to capture social and environmental impact as well. So we want people that can clearly define to us the indicators and how it is we mobilize the sector to start capturing that, because that's certainly one of the challenges that we have. We want to do this impact study, but we know that most co-ops at this point are not rigorously capturing their social and environmental impacts or efforts even. So those are things that we need brains at the table to really be able to determine what that process will look like. I guess that's the biggest part. We also will want readers on the various iterations of our papers, and at this point we're also looking for research assistants. So George Karafelis from Cape Breton University will be he'll be the lead on that project for the economic aspect of it, and so we'll be looking for folks that are wanting to collaborate with him on our research team in terms of taking what he did in Nova Scotia to a national level. So I think that might answer your question. Is there anything further?
Oh, that's great. Thank you. And that's the start of a conversation in response to Erica's question also, which is looking for ways that people in doing PhD studies can become involved. And I'm sure that the other projects would have similar opportunities as well. Ted or Jerry, would you speak to the question of what do you think community-based organizations might be doing to prepare themselves and to respond proactively to partnership invitations?
Okay, we'll start out, and Ted has convinced me to start out. And from the community-based organization perspective, it's always wonderful when a university or college approaches you and wants to do a project, because it's really good to think about supporting the learning and all of those sorts of things and getting some additional resources. The really important piece from the community-based organization perspective is what is it your community needs to get from the partnership, and what is it you need from the partnership, and how do you have the resources to do the work that partnership requires. So those are the kinds of things that are important from a community-based organization's perspective in engaging in these partnerships. And I'll pass it over to Ted now.
And understand that these organizations have different rhythms. If I could, not to put too fine a point on it, but universities take a long time to make decisions. They, in the bigger sense, they can move quickly in terms of student projects and local projects, and that's all good. But and also to move money to community groups. Even our project, which is designed to really do a lot of that, we're still dealing with issues of hyper accountability in both the government and our own institutions. So it's tough on community-based organizations that are on the edge in terms of fundraising and funding themselves to deal with a big, well-funded, generally well-funded organization still under pressure. So these kinds of, there are asymmetries built into this that you have to fight through and work through and have allies both inside and outside to deal with.
Thank you very much. I see that we have now reached the end of our time. I want to just say, first of all, there's a web link here to all of the research programs that have been profiled here today. There is a Google group for the CCEDNet Research Committee, and a place where we share information and a way to get involved. And then finally, a link to subscribe to CCEDNet newsletters, and perhaps also where you can consider becoming a member of the organization. Everybody who's been on the call should have received a short 1-minute evaluation survey by email. Please do fill that out. Your feedback is very important to us. I know you all are going to join me in again thanking our speakers for their concise presentations. We really did pack a lot in today, but hopefully we've achieved our goal of making everybody aware of the good work that is being done, and providing a forum where connections can be made. We decided we would invite everybody that we could think of who was working in this area, and we're just thrilled that everybody who we invited did decide to participate with us. So thank you again. This call, or at least this webinar, will be posted to the website, and we'll send you a link as soon as it's made available. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for organizing this.